My mom blamed Maine for my sister's suicide attempt after I exposed her cheating to her fiancé, and now she wants Maine to fix everything or leave the family for good. It all started with a family trip that was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. My sister had just graduated with her bachelor's degree, and I had just finished high school. Our parents thought a cruise would be the perfect way to celebrate both milestones. A chance for us to relax as a family, to enjoy some time away from the stresses of real life. It felt like a reward for everything we had achieved. But as we set sail into the open ocean, none of us had any idea that this trip would become the start of something much darker, something that would haunt me forever. For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. The weather was beautiful, the ocean stretched out endlessly in every direction, and we had everything we could possibly want at our fingertips. It felt like a dream. But behind the smiles and the relaxation, there was a secret. I was about to uncover a secret that would change everything. I wasn't trying to snoop, but sometimes you stumble across things you wish you hadn't. My sister, the one everyone thought was so perfect, had been sneaking around with another guy on the cruise. It wasn't just a one-time thing. I saw them together multiple times, holding hands, whispering, sneaking off to secluded corners of the ship. And the worst part, she was engaged. Her fiancé wasn't just some random guy, he was someone who had been a part of our family for 3 years. He was kind, thoughtful, and he genuinely loved her. Seeing her betray him like that made me sick to my stomach. My sister and I used to be so close. I remember when we were kids, we shared a room, and she was always the one to comfort me when I had a nightmare. There were nights when I would wake up crying from a bad dream, and she'd let me crawl into her bed. "Don't worry," she'd say, "I'll protect you." She always felt like my protector, someone I could look up to. But as we grew older, things changed. She became the perfect daughter in our parents' eyes, the one who never made mistakes. Meanwhile, I was always compared to her, always falling short. I think that's why I agreed to keep her secret. It was this twisted sense of loyalty, of trying to prove that I could be trusted, that I could be her equal. But the guilt weighed on me every single day after I saw her with that guy. The moment she realized I had seen her, she panicked. "Please," she begged me, "don't say anything. If he finds out, it'll ruin everything." She had this way of making everything seem like it was about her, like her feelings were the only ones that mattered. I could feel the weight of her request pushing down on me. She was older, the golden child in our family, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was the younger sister, always in her shadow, always the one trying to live up to the standard she had set. So, I did what I thought I had to do. I kept quiet. But it wasn't because I wanted to, it was because I didn't want to be the one who caused the chaos. The guilt started eating away at me almost immediately. Every time I saw her fiancé's face, I felt like I was betraying him too. How could I let him walk around, clueless, while his fiancé was sneaking around behind his back? It was tearing me apart inside. But at the same time, I felt trapped. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't want to destroy my sister's relationship. I didn't want to be the one to shatter everything. So, I did something I thought would help. I told 2 of my closest friends. I thought they could help me figure out what to do, that they would keep it between us. But secrets have a way of getting out. I don't know exactly how it happened, but somehow her fiancé found out, and it was because of me. The guilt I had been carrying doubled in an instant. I hadn't just kept a secret, I had caused everything to come crashing down. I later learned that it all came to a head during a family dinner. We were at this small restaurant, one of those places where the tables are packed in so tight that you can hear everything the people next to you are saying. I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I ran into one of the friends I had confided in. She asked me, "Is it weird between you and your sister now?" And without thinking, I said, "Yeah, I feel like I have to be loyal to her because she's my sister, but I also feel terrible for not telling him she cheated." What I didn't know at the time was that her fiancé had overheard the whole conversation. He was standing nearby, waiting for us to return to the table. When I came back, I saw him on his phone, but I didn't think much of it. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my sister's life would implode. That night, he broke up with her. He confronted her, accused her of cheating, and mentioned what he had overheard me say. My sister was devastated. She had been caught, and it was all because of me. The worst part, I wasn't even there when it happened. I was sitting at home, clueless, until my mom stormed into my room, furious. She told me that I had ruined everything. I had betrayed my sister, destroyed her relationship, and for what? A moment of weakness? My sister couldn't even look at me. I felt like the weight of the world had been dropped on my shoulders. The next few days were unbearable. My mom and my sister both refused to speak to me. They wouldn't even look at me. It was like I didn't exist anymore. My dad was the only one who didn't seem to blame me, but even he didn't know what to say to make things better. Every time I walked into a room, the tension was so thick I could feel it pressing down on me. It was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to explain that I hadn't meant for any of this to happen, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. In their eyes, I was the villain, the one who had torn our family apart. My sister and I hadn't always been so distant. There were times when we'd stay up late, talking about our dreams, our future, and everything in between. But those conversations felt like they belonged to a different world now. A world where she hadn't cheated, where I hadn't told anyone. It was as if I was grieving the loss of the sister I used to know, the sister who would have never put me in this position. Then came the night that changed everything. I was asleep when my dad woke me up. I had never seen him so panicked. He was crying, his voice shaking as he told me something had happened to my sister. My heart stopped. I could hear my mom sobbing somewhere down the hall. I jumped out of bed and ran to my sister's old room. The moment I walked in, I knew something was horribly wrong. She was lying on the floor, completely still. My mom was on the phone with 911, screaming words that didn't even make sense. My sister had tried to commit suicide. That moment is burned into my memory. I can't get the image of her out of my head. I felt like the world had crumbled around me. All I could think was, this is my fault. If I had just kept quiet, none of this would have happened. My family wouldn't be falling apart. My sister wouldn't be lying there, fighting for her life. The guilt was overwhelming, suffocating. It felt like I was drowning in it. We rushed to the hospital, waiting for what felt like an eternity to hear if she would be okay. I couldn't sit still. Every second felt like a lifetime. And then, in the middle of it all, I made the mistake of telling my dad that I was thirsty. He was about to help me find some water when my mom snapped. She lost it on both of us, but mostly on me. She screamed that everything was my fault. That if my sister didn't make it, her blood would be on my hands. And then she said something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. She wished it had been me instead of my sister. Hearing those words from my own mother broke something inside of me. I had never felt so alone, so completely destroyed. My dad yelled at her for saying such horrible things, but she wouldn't back down. She insisted that she was right, that I was the reason our family was in this mess. I started to believe her. Maybe it really was all my fault. Maybe I was the one to blame for everything. Eventually, my grandma came to pick me up from the hospital. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay, to be there for my sister, but my dad insisted I go. I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want me to hear any more of the awful things my mom was saying. But even as I left the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a burden, that my presence was making everything worse. At this point, all I felt was numbness. When we got home, the quietness of the house was deafening. No more yelling, no more arguments, just silence, as if everyone was avoiding talking about what had just happened. I sat in my room, staring at the walls, my thoughts racing, but somehow my body felt too heavy to move. My phone was buzzing with messages from my friends, probably wondering what had happened, but I couldn't talk to anyone. What would I even say? It was a few days later when my grandma tried to talk to me. She sat me down and asked how I was feeling. I don't know, I told her, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. Scared of the fact that I had started to believe what my mom said, that I was the one to blame for all of this. But my grandma, in her calm and gentle way, said something that I hadn't expected. You didn't cause this, she said. People make their own choices. Your sister made hers. It was not your responsibility to keep her secret, and it is not your fault that things happened the way they did. Her words hit me like a wave of relief. I had been so consumed by guilt that I hadn't even considered that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all on me. Maybe I wasn't the villain in this story. But even as I felt that small glimmer of relief, there was still the reality of my family to deal with. My mom still refused to speak to me, and my sister was recovering but distant. Every day felt like walking on eggshells, and I had no idea when or if things would ever go back to normal. Weeks went by, and the tension never fully disappeared. We went through the motions, pretending things were fine, but underneath it all, there was still that lingering hurt. I could tell my sister was trying to move on, but every time I saw her, there was a look in her eyes that told me things would never be the same between us. And as for my mom, I don't know if she'll ever forgive me. Part of me wonders if she even sees me as her daughter anymore, or just the girl who ruined everything.